In November 1989, a man using the pseudonym Dennis appeared in silhouette on Las Vegas television station KLAS. His voice was calm, almost clinical, as he described working on extraterrestrial spacecraft at a secret government facility in the Nevada desert. Within weeks, he would reveal his true identity, Bob Lazar, and ignite a firestorm that the United States government has never been able to fully extinguish. Before Lazar, Area 51 was an obscure military testing ground known only to aviation enthusiasts and defense insiders. After Lazar, it became the most famous secret base on Earth. His claims were extraordinary: alien craft, exotic propulsion, and a conspiracy of silence reaching the highest levels of power. This is the story of the man who says he saw the impossible and paid the price for telling the world.
To understand how Bob Lazar ended up at the most classified facility in America, you have to go back to his early career. Lazar claimed he studied physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and electronic technology at the California Institute of Technology. He was, by his own account, a brilliant and unconventional thinker who thrived on building jet-powered cars and rocket-propelled bicycles in his spare time. In the mid-1980s, Lazar secured a position as a technician at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, the birthplace of the atomic bomb. The government would later deny he ever worked there. But a 1982 Los Alamos Monitor newspaper article listed Bob Lazar by name as a physicist at the lab, complete with a photograph. This single piece of evidence would become one of the most critical artifacts in the entire saga. In late 1988, Bob Lazar says he was recruited for a position unlike anything in the civilian world. Through connections at Los Alamos, he was introduced to a contractor named Edward Teller, the legendary father of the hydrogen bomb. Lazar described a brief but pivotal encounter with Teller at a scientific lecture, after which he submitted his resume and was contacted by a shadowy division within the Department of Naval Intelligence. After grueling background checks and intimidating security briefings, Lazar was flown to Area 51's Groom Lake facility. But his final destination lay further south, a site he would come to know as S4, nestled into the base of Papoose Mountain near Papoose Lake. According to Lazar, what awaited him inside that mountain would shatter his understanding of physics, technology, and humanity's place in the universe. Bob Lazar described walking into a hangar built into the side of Papoose Mountain and seeing something that stopped him in his tracks. Before him sat a disc-shaped craft, roughly 40 feet in diameter, with a seamless metallic surface that seemed almost organic. He said it looked like nothing built by human hands. Over the course of his assignment, Lazar claims he was shown a total of 9 alien spacecraft housed in separate bays carved into the mountainside, each of a slightly different design. His specific task was to understand and attempt to reverse engineer the propulsion system of one craft, designated the Sport model for its smooth, streamlined appearance. He was told almost nothing about the origin of these vehicles. Compartmentalization was absolute. Each scientist saw only their piece of the puzzle, and asking questions outside your assignment was strictly forbidden. The heart of Lazar's claims centered on the propulsion system. He described a reactor about the size of a basketball that produced an enormous amount of energy with no heat, no radiation, and no conventional fuel. The key to this reactor was an element that, in 1989, did not exist on the periodic table, element 115, which Lazar called moscovium decades before scientists would synthesize it. According to Lazar, when element 115 was bombarded with protons, it created a stable isotope that generated its own gravitational field. This gravity wave could be amplified and directed by 3 emitters on the underside of the craft, allowing it to warp space-time around itself. The craft didn't fly in any traditional sense. It pulled its destination toward itself, effectively falling through folded space. Lazar insisted this was not theoretical. He said he watched it operate. Lazar also claimed he was briefly shown documents that described the extraterrestrial origin of the craft. The briefing papers stated that the vehicles came from the Zeta Reticuli star system, approximately 39 light-years from Earth. The documents allegedly referenced an ongoing relationship between the U.S. government and extraterrestrial beings, stretching back decades. Lazar said he read about biological specimens and the alien involvement in human evolution, claims so staggering that even he admitted they could have been deliberate disinformation planted to test his reactions. He was deeply unsettled by the experience. The security protocols at S4 were suffocating. Armed guards monitored his every move, phone calls were recorded, and he was warned that his life and the lives of his family depended on absolute silence. But Bob Lazar was not a man who stayed silent for long. Before going public, Lazar had taken a small group of friends to the desert outside Area 51 to witness what he said were scheduled test flights of the alien craft. Among them was John Lear, a legendary pilot and son of Learjet inventor Bill Lear, who had his own deep connections to the UFO community. On multiple Wednesday nights in 1989, the group drove to the edge of the restricted zone near Highway 375 and watched glowing objects perform impossible maneuvers in the sky above Groom Lake. They recorded some of this on camcorder, shaky, distant footage of bright orbs darting and hovering in ways no known aircraft could replicate. On one of these excursions, they were caught by security personnel and detained. Lazar was subsequently called in by his superiors at S4 and told in no uncertain terms that his activities had been monitored. His clearance was revoked, and his career at S4 was over. The backlash against Bob Lazar was swift and systematic. Skeptics and government investigators claimed they could find no records of Lazar ever attending MIT or Caltech. His academic transcripts had seemingly vanished. The institutions denied he was ever enrolled. Lazar maintained that his records had been deliberately erased as part of a campaign to discredit him and destroy his credibility. Curiously, his employment at Los Alamos was also initially denied by the laboratory, until George Knapp uncovered the 1982 newspaper article and a Los Alamos phone directory that listed Lazar by name. Former colleagues at Los Alamos also confirmed they had worked with him. The pattern was unsettling. The government appeared to be actively scrubbing the existence of a man who had spoken publicly about their most classified program. If Lazar was simply a fraud, why go to such extraordinary lengths? One of the most stunning vindications of Bob Lazar's story came in 2003, 14 years after his claims, when a team of Russian and American scientists at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Dubna, Russia, successfully synthesized element 115. In 1989, when Lazar first described it, element 115 did not appear on any periodic table. Scientists had theorized about super-heavy elements, but none had been created. Lazar didn't just predict its existence. He described specific properties, including that a stable isotope of element 115 could produce anti-gravity effects. The synthesized element was later officially named moscovium in 2016 by the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. Skeptics argue that predicting a super-heavy element wasn't remarkable. But Lazar's supporters point out that he described its properties with unusual specificity long before any laboratory confirmed its creation. The coincidence, they say, strains credulity. In November 2017, the FBI raided Bob Lazar's business, United Nuclear Scientific Equipment and Supplies, in Langsburg, Michigan. The stated reason was an investigation into the sale of potentially restricted chemicals. But the timing raised eyebrows across the UFO research community. The raid occurred just weeks before the bombshell New York Times article that revealed the existence of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, known as AATIP, run by Luis Elizondo. Lazar and George Knapp both suggested the real purpose of the raid was to search for any remaining samples of element 115 that Lazar claimed to have smuggled out of S4 decades earlier. Lazar had long maintained that he possessed a small quantity of the element as insurance. Whether the FBI found what they were looking for has never been publicly disclosed. The raid only deepened the mystery surrounding the most controversial UFO whistleblower in history. In 2018, filmmaker Jeremy Corbell released the documentary Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, narrated by Mickey Rourke, which brought Lazar's story to a new generation. The film featured extensive new interviews with Lazar and reignited global interest in his claims. Joe Rogan then hosted Lazar and Corbell on his podcast in June 2019, an episode that has been viewed over 40 million times. During the conversation, Lazar appeared measured, reluctant, and visibly uncomfortable with fame, characteristics that many viewers found more convincing than any piece of physical evidence. He repeatedly stated he wished he had never gone public. He described persistent headaches and a sense of dread that has followed him for 30 years. Whether Bob Lazar is the greatest whistleblower of all time or the most elaborate hoaxer, one thing is undeniable: his story refuses to die, and the world is finally starting to listen.